What's up? It's your boy D Change coming at ya with another Daily Dave. Today, let's talk about cheats, video game cheats. So, a buddy of mine recently told me or sent me an article about how Call of Duty Warzone is like um, rolling out anti-cheat waves or anti-cheat bans, and they kind of use a lot of methods to what do you call it, detect cheaters and then get rid of them. And so some of those ways is like they're kind of linking your identity to like your account name to like your computer hardware to like one of the big things is they're forcing anyone who makes a new account to verify their identity via SMS. So like you have to have a cell phone, and you'll get a text, and then you put in a code that they send you to verify that you're a real person. And so like it's kind of part of that like escalating warfare of like cheaters and hackers versus like white hat and like security professionals. And this is going to be a never-ending thing. That's the thing with technology, is that there's no I feel like there's no true way to like get rid of this type of abuse. There's ways to mitigate it, and in a way, you have to be very draconian about it in order to ensure some sort of incredibly high standard of like protection from cheaters and stuff like that. And that's why, like for example, if you buy into a certain type of software suite and they require you to like only authenticate through that software suite, and like you can only get certain products there. Like I'm kind of referring to Apple, but not really, because in a way, like it's in a way the reason why there aren't that many Apple viruses or hackers and cheaters or whatever, or not cheaters, but in a way why there isn't as much of a demand for that is because there's like fewer users. There's always going to be a demand for basically free software, right? There's always going to be some sort of demand for like, can I crack this? Can I finagle this to work for myself? So it's always going to be out there. But yeah, so a big thing about video games in general on the PC is that because a PC is like not some sort of super standard regulated machine, you can install software on it that allows you to cheat in games, such as like aim assist or like auto targeting, auto headshots, like shooting through walls, just crazy stuff like that. That's not supposed to be part of the game. And so most of the time your games have like anti-cheat systems in place. So they scan your computer as you play or when you launch in order to find these like rogue programs. Now usually what happens is they scan your computer, and then if they detect it, they'll send the information back home, and they'll analyze it. They'll like discover how the cheat works. They'll figure out workarounds, and then instead of like insta banning you, they'll actually like wait a while and then ban you in a wave. So Blizzard does this all the time with like Overwatch and stuff like that. They detect the cheats first, and then like once a month they do a huge ban where a bunch of people who have been cheating for a while instantly just knocked out of their accounts. They lose everything basically. And if you're like you have a verified identity, then you're basically done. There are ways around it, such as like change your address, get a new phone number, and stuff like that. But eventually it becomes more trouble than it's worth, right? Like this video that my friend sent me was like about how someone visited a cheaters forum, and they're saying, oh yeah, all these bans in Warzone, like we gotta find new ways to like get around these cheats. So they'd be like, oh, just get a SIM card from your local store, get a new phone number, put it into your phone, you can verify that way. Not so inconvenient. But like something even crazier is like, your motherboard gets marked as like a cheating hardware motherboard, so you have to buy a new motherboard and like build a completely new computer just to like use cheats in a game. And I'm just like, man, imagine like you're so bad that you're willing to pay a ton of money to cheat in a video game. Like, I don't know, like it's just really funny to me because I don't like I feel like I've seen cheats used before, or like I've used them before, like way in the past, and it's just like, okay, you know, you get that you get that need met once or twice, but like what's the big deal, right? I don't know. First, I think it's just one of those things that's harder for me to really relate to. But this reminds me of the more like the broader conversation of how do you handle anti-cheat, right? Because one thing I just thought of is like in South Korea, if you want to play online games or like do stuff on the internet, you're supposed to have a social security number. Like, I think what people don't realize about South Korea is that technically that country's still at war with the North, and it's always had like certain legislation and provisions in its law to kind of activate like a wartime type of a society. So there are really interesting little tidbits about it, such as Google Maps doesn't have the most up-to-date data on South Korea. If you go to Google Maps and you hover over South Korea right now, it looks like a map from the 90s. It's really interesting. But that's part of law, that only domestic South Korean servers can maintain correct geopositional data or something like that, or like geographical data. If it's on someone else's servers, like they're just like, nope, this is rogue, we don't support that, and we don't want to give it out. So it's really interesting. But anyway, so like I don't know if this is like, I don't know deeply enough about the government system over there in Republic of Korea, but yeah, what I've heard before, because this was common in StarCraft, like kids would need their social security numbers to go online at net cafes and then like play StarCraft. Well, if you got caught cheating, they'd ban you, and your account is linked to your social security number. So it's like, okay, you're done. And so there were workarounds such as, oh, let me get my mom's social security number, let me get my dad's social security number, because not everyone was on the internet or net cafes or whatever. But I feel like as the more we get into, you know, a fully online society, the harder it is to run. And this is one of those interesting not paradoxes, but like this is one of those things that I feel like are going to be discussed a lot, because it's that sci-fi kind of dang, what is the word? It's not theory, it's conundrum. I don't know. It's basically like weighing one thing against another, right? So why I mentioned this is because South Korea uses social security numbers. I think in China they do something similar where your identity is tied to your account number, and in a way they can kind of track how you behave on the internet, right? Like antisocial behavior is punished, and as long as you're following the law and kind of being a good citizen, things are fine, right? Here in the States, there's always been this ethos of, there's always been this kind of feeling of like the government doesn't own us. They're not allowed to like tell us what to do and stuff like that, right? Which there is some irony in, because the idea here is that the government's only job, if you want to rewind all the way back to the founding and like the traditional idea of the states, it's that like the government's job is to enforce the rights of the people. But like, how do you enforce the rights of the people, right? Technically, the people elect the government, and then the government's job is to enforce rights. But then like, I feel like there's this weird, okay, it is way too late for me to articulate kind of the paradox of it. But it's like, the idea is that, okay, you're depending on an entity that you don't trust to enforce the rights that should be given to you by this entity that you don't trust. I don't know. This is commentary for a different video. But anyway, it's part of the larger conversation of like freedoms versus social cohesion, right? I mean, I hate using the word because it is seriously overused here, like freedoms or freedom, right? Like we got freedom to protest, freedom to assemble, freedom to bear arms, or the right to bear arms. Like just the whole like free speech or whatever, right? It's always used in a certain way when actually contextually it's supposed to only mean in certain instances. So yeah, I got reminded of like when Blizzard announced that they wanted to tie your account to your real name. It was called like Real ID or something like that, which is ironic because uh the in the US federally we have a Real ID thing now, which means like our driver's licenses and our passports are supposed to be linked, and we're supposed to be proven to be like residents slash citizens of the country. And if you don't have it, then like you can't use your driver's license to verify your identity for flying anymore. So anyway, yeah. Blizzard wanted to do that a long time ago, and Blizzard Activision is the company that runs Call of Duty Warzone. So that's what I found interesting, is that over time they've always been inching towards more of a like, how do we combat bad actors in the system? And this is this is going to be true of any society. I feel like you're going to scale to a point where it's a lot harder to kind of individually manage it, and you could arguably depend on community enforcement. It still works, right? Like different neighborhoods act differently, and they will enforce certain rules. Like that's what an HOA is, right? Like a housing association. They enforce certain rules in their neighborhood. But when you're talking about games that are global, that's when things get kind of tough, because you're literally trying to work with multiple nationalities, cultures, sovereign territories, and like their governments, right? So in this case, yeah, like I guess from for like a North American perspective, because I'm not sure if they use SMS in the other countries to verify your ID, but here, if you create a new account and you want to play Warzone, because it's a free game, you gotta at least prove that you're real. So that's a piece of information that like before wasn't given to game companies or their servers or whatever, but now it is. I feel like back in the day you would just install a game, but here's the irony: you would buy the game from a store, and you had a key included, and that proved that you were a real person, that you bought it at a store or something like that. Now that's definitely not enough. Like you can generate keys, you can steal them. There are ways around activation systems like that now. So it's literally like it's this tug of war of like, I need more of your personal information to prove that you're a real person and that we can, you're allowed to play this game. So I generally am okay with it because I don't like cheaters in games. I don't think they deserve to be there. It ruins the game for everyone else. That's the social cost of allowing cheaters. If you have a game and you're just like completely laissez-faire about it, like you're just like, oh, just let the community regulate it. There's no actual fight against hackers unless you hack against them. And at that point, what is the point of even playing the game by its rules anymore? You're literally just changing the rules of the game. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting, but so yeah, I'm a fan of it. But then I know that this is a point of contention for a lot of people. I mean, even just like stuff like, oh, this is a new game delivery platform and it takes my information. I'm not down with that, and understandably so. Some people just don't want to give their name, number, address, etc. to multiple institutions. Totally fine. But I definitely see it becoming more common now because, yeah, like what ways do we have to like verify that we're either real people? I mean, the thing about the internet is that I've always thought of it as like, okay, it's kind of got this Wild West feel to it. It's very clear that institutions are trying their best to really regulate it, but there's always been this kind of this ability to kind of live a double life on the internet, or multiple lives really, because yeah, you can make different identities, you can pretend to be something or someone else, and in a way you can do that in real life too. It's hard, don't get me wrong, like government surveillance is so good now, and I truly, I don't mean that in like a tinfoil hat way. I truly mean that as in like record keeping is really strong now, right? So like there are a lot of ways to kind of pinpoint who you are and what you've done, right? Based on financial transactions, geolocation data. Your phones are basically broadcasting to cell towers wherever you are. If someone wanted to find you and they're willing to put in enough effort and get the government involved, they will eventually find you. that's the whole point, right? But here's the thing, like, in a way, as long as you're not practicing antisocial stuff, and again, I never liked that argument because yeah, I used to be a really big privacy advocate, but I also understand that like there are costs to everything, right? If we had full privacy for everything, you know, I think we would have an even worse situation than how we're handling the pandemic right now, because literally going, oh, I can't give up patient data at all, or I can't give up any of my information. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to tell you where I've been or who I've been in contact with. Like, no way. I mean, contact tracing is still voluntary here. I think in other countries and governments, it's mandatory. Like, they'll be like, no, you got to tell us. Like, this is a public health crisis. So it opens up a can of worms that like I feel like I didn't realize was like didn't really think about before. And if anything, we're having more of these conversations now. And I think it's good and healthy to really talk about it, because we do have to figure out the path forward, right? The future is going to look different. We can't stay the same and like forever. And realistically, normal, quote unquote, before the pandemic, that's not going to be normal after the pandemic. So that was a little too like, I don't know, profound / in your face or whatever. But what I wanted to talk about was cheats in games and how it is related to that type of thing, right? So yeah, I find it interesting because yes, you do have to do something to police your own games and networks. But I can see how it's a really tough choice to try to balance it, right? I think we've had some moments of like game companies really just overstep their boundaries, like with DRM and stuff like that. One of them could be Riot with Valorant and the Vanguard system. It's an anti-cheat system too, but it's a rootkit, which means it goes farthest, deepest into your operating system's I don't know, the core of it, right? It basically boots up with your hardware so that it makes sure that anything you launch is not a cheat. But it's not refined. Like, people have been complaining about their hardware like blowing up, basically not working well with it. You know, sometimes you install other programs and the anti-cheat thinks it's a cheat, or like certain drivers are disabled. So these are very real, complicated problems that people are trying to solve, and I find it really interesting. But it's just sad that like the battlefield just happens to be like the user base, right? Like, we get screwed because in a way, like, there are certain bad actors that just want to keep doing things their way. But I guess that's life, right? I mean, you'll never truly be able to get rid of murder, right? Some people are just going to murder people. So how far are we willing to go to prevent that? I don't know, man. But it's the same thing with a pandemic. How many people are we willing to let die so that everyone else can live normally? And that's a question we're just still trying to answer right now. Every nation is kind of choosing a different spot on the slider. So it's just something to think about. I'm gonna go play Call of Duty Warzone this weekend, so I'll see you online. Anyway, thanks for listening to another TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace out. I'll see you in the next one.